Hello everybody and welcome back to another farm tutorial. So today I want to be showing you how to build a bee farm that's super reliable. It's also tileable and pretty simple. And what makes it so reliable is that whenever there's honey in here, it will continually try to harvest it, which means this will never get clogged with honey and break the farm. And also with the bottles up here, you could have any amount you want, unlike other farms where you have to fill in every single slot. This one you could just have a few bottles in here or completely filled, everything still works. And before we get into looking at how this thing works, I want to talk about a few requirements and a few things I think you should know before we get started. So the first thing you're going to need to actually build a bee farm are bees themselves, and so you could find them in nests just naturally in the world, and they spawn in most likely in plains and sunflower plains, and they have a 5% chance to be on any of the trees there. And in a flower forest they have a 2% chance, but you have a lot more trees there, so you have a pretty good chance at finding one there. And then you have a 0.2% chance in a forest, wooded hills, a birch forest, a tall birch forest, a birch forest hills, and then also the tall birch hills. So all those biomes you will have a chance at finding a naturally generated beehive, but if you already have some kind of bee farm set up or bees collected, you don't have to worry about this at all. But I want to show you one other really cool way that I just learned that you could get bees. So one way that you could actually get beehives is by growing birch or oak trees, and you have to grow them next to two flowers. I don't know if they need to be directly next to it, but I know this formation here definitely works. And so what I have set up right here is a command block that will automatically get rid of any of the birch logs. That just makes it really easy to plant more. And so now what I'm going to do is place these into here, and this is all just so I can show you a quick demonstration. I'm going to grow this sapling just like this, and there you can see all the logs get taken away, and that time we got no beehive. But now what I'm going to do is just keep doing this process until we actually get a beehive to pop into the world. And there we go, that actually took a surprisingly long time, but we got a bee nest. And when you do this, a bee nest will pop in with 1 to 3 bees. And again, how I'm doing that is you just need to plant a birch or oak sapling anywhere in the world next to 2 flowers, and it needs to be at least 2 flowers or more. And when you do that, you have a 5% chance or a 1 in 20 chance of getting a bee nest to naturally spawn on that tree. And everything else I had with the command and the bone meal and everything, that's just all so I could speed up the process and show you guys. And the one other thing I want to mention is that a tool with Silk Touch will be a huge help when building this farm. You don't necessarily need it, but it's going to be extremely important. And so you could have that Silk Touch on any of your tools, a pickaxe, anything. An axe works the best since that breaks these nests the quickest, but you don't actually need it on an axe at all. All you need is any tool with Silk Touch. So that's pretty much everything, and one other thing is you will need to have another access to gather the quartz for this comparator, but that's pretty much it. This thing isn't too complicated. So now I'm going to show you how it all works, and then after that I'm going to show you how you could best gather bees in order to put them into this farm, because in each of these bee nests you want to have about 3 bees. That's the maximum bees per nest that you could have. So that's the easiest way to do it, is just to get 3 in each nest, and I'll show you how to do that. But first, let's go through this farm. So the way that it works is that we have a beehive, and you could also use the bee nest, the ones that you could actually craft that look like little crates. You could use those too. But the way that it works is that we have this nest right here, and the front of it is facing towards this grass block, and you gotta have the front facing towards this grass block. That's the way that the bees exit. If you had it facing back here, they would exit out here and leave the farm. So you gotta have that facing towards the front. Then right in front here we have a 2 tall flower. I don't know if that actually matters at all. I'll look into that real quick. But I place a 2 tall flower right here, so the bees pop out, start getting pollinated pretty much immediately, and head right back in. And whenever they're in the farm, they'll stay there for 2 minutes before popping out again. And every single time they leave the nest after entering it with the pollination, they'll actually increase the honey level by 1 point, and the maximum level of the nest is 5. And so this farm works with both bottles and shears. And so if we look at the redstone some more, we have a comparator detecting the honey level. Once it reaches 5 and powers every single one of these 5 redstone, it depowers the torch, which starts activating this clock. And we have this repeater set to 2 ticks, so that way the clock doesn't burn out as it activates, I think. Yeah, probably having it there is just good. So this clock will keep pulsing back and forth in a little motion like this, and every single time it pulses, it will activate this. And the reason why having multiple pulses is pretty important is it means that when the honey bottles get put into here, and not just the empty bottles, it will keep dispensing and when it dispenses something it's randomized. So let's say it at first dispenses this into the hoppers we're going to place down below, and then next it dispenses the bottles and collects some more honey and places it into here. It pretty much just makes it keep dispensing until it actually collects the honey with one of the empty bottles you have in the dispenser. So I guess that's pretty much it. The bees exit the farm, collect pollen from the flower, go back in, that increases the honey level up to 5, and once it reaches 5, it activates this clock over and over until it can actually get one of these empty bottles to collect it, and if you have no empty bottles in here, it'll keep collecting, and if it dispenses any of the honey bottles, it will go down into the hopper that I should have placed right down here, because the collection hopper you have for this thing goes right underneath the farm, and I'll place that in now. So that collection system looks just like this. We have a hopper right underneath the bee farm, and it goes straight into this chest here, so anything we collect will now end up here, instead of just getting spit out randomly. And you guys can pretty much get the idea of the farm just by looking at this. I'll go through how to build it in just a little, but first I want to show you how to actually collect these bees for this thing. So the easiest way that I found to start this thing is to find a naturally spawned in bee nest. And I think it's pretty much easier than going and trying to spawn in one of these by growing the trees over and over, but that's definitely an option if you need it. And so what I would do is go out on exploration looking for some bee nests. I would definitely recommend bringing a silk touch tool. If you don't bring silk touch, what you're going to have to do is harvest honeycombs, and whenever you harvest from a bee nest not using the farm, make sure you place a campfire underneath it. The way that it works is that the smoke going into the bee nest simulates real life, where you could smoke the bees to calm them down, and then you could collect their honey and stuff without them getting angry. And so pretty much get your silk touch tool and collect the bee nest, and if you use silk touch, any bees that are inside it will actually stay in there inside your pockets. So let's say that you saw 3 bees go in here and you collect the nest, that means you're ready to go and place it straight into your farm, but if not, make sure you at least get 2 so that way you could breed them later on. And so again, that's how you would do it if you did have silk touch, and if you didn't, what you'd have to do is get shears and shear the bee nest with a campfire underneath to keep the bees from attacking you, and you need to collect at least 3 honeycombs. You'd then use those 3 honeycombs and 6 wood planks to make a new bee nest that you could carry with you, and then all you need are the bees, which you could lead back to your base using either flowers in your hand and you could lure them that way, or you could also put leads on them and carry them across just like balloons. So now that you collected your bee nests with hopefully at least 2 bees so you could breed them, if not, you'll have to go collect more bees until you get at least 2 bees in the nest, or you just carry them over. And now the next step is to make a little enclosure so that way we could keep our bees from flying around everywhere. And so I just went ahead and made this little bee enclosure, and one thing that I want you to think about when making these, and it's something that I noticed when working on these, is that baby bees seem to be able to go up and fly up right towards the roof, and once they grow up into bigger bees, it seems like their hitbox expands into the block that they're directly below, and they're actually able to kind of glitch through it and escape the area, so that's something to keep in mind. One other thing I want to show you is that an easy way to get in and out of here without getting the bees through is to make a little system just like this. And then all you have to do is get a water bucket and fill in these 2 top spots, because bees do not like water. You gotta be careful that your bees don't fly in here and die, that'd be kind of annoying. But all you need is something like this that you could easily go pass through, but the bees won't be able to escape from. And so then once you get your enclosure all built up, all you need to do is place down your bee nest, and as long as there's some bees in here, they should pretty quickly start to fly out. And so you gotta wait for that, and once you get all of your bees out, or at least 2 of them, you could break the nest, and you gotta be careful, because if you break this without silk touch, the bees will get mad at you and attack you. And the bad thing about bees attacking you is that when they sting you, they lose their stingers and die about a minute after. So you gotta make sure they don't sting you, at least for the bees' sake. But if you have your 2 bees in here and you remove the nest with silk touch, you should be all good. You can leave it there, I think it's just easy, so that way the bees aren't disappearing and reappearing. So I just spawned in 2 bees since I think our nest was actually empty, but the next step is just to start breeding these guys up. It takes 1 flower each, and so it's 2 flowers per baby, and so there we just got a baby bee. You could speed up its growth by feeding it a ton of flowers, but it takes about maybe 2 stacks, and maybe if you do it this happens. I'm not sure if he's good, too many flowers. So anyway, you want to keep breeding these guys up until you at least get 5, so you could have 2 to stay in here to be the breeding bees and 3 to take in your nest for your farm. And another thing I should mention is that this is only really important if you want to have a big bee farm. If you're just doing 1 module, like this system we have set up, all you really need to do is find a bee nest that has 3 bees and bring that over. That will work just fine. But I wanted to have one on my survival world where I had like 10 or 20 of these modules, so I built up a system like this to breed up bees. And then the final thing is, once you get your 5 bees or enough to start harvesting from, all you have to do is place down a hive, and then once you place down that hive, you just gotta wait for 3 bees to enter it. And while I was editing, I realized there's a few things I wanted to mention. The first thing is you could just put a trapdoor here when you're not going through this thing, so that we could keep the bees from going in the water. And the second thing is, when you want them to go into the nest, you gotta make sure to place down a flower, so that way they could get the pollination just like this guy. And once they get the pollination, as soon as they find a nest to go into, they will. So you just gotta make sure to do that when they're going into the nest. So once you get 3 of these pollinated bees to go in there, you could collect the nest, and that's how you get the 3 in there. As soon as they do, use your silk touch tool to collect it. You have 3 bees in there, the rest of the bees will remain in here, and then you just gotta bring that now with 3 bees in it over to your farm. And now that you have collected as many bee nests as you like, each of those with 3 bees in them, you could get to work on your farm. And so for one module on the exact system we have built up here, you're going to need all this stuff in this chest. So for redstone, we have 1 comparator, 1 repeater, 2 torches, and 7 redstone. And then for all the kind of structure blocks, we have 1 grass block for the flower to be planted on, the bee nest with the 3 bees in them, and then a flower of any kind. I'm pretty sure you could use any flower, whether it's too tall or not. I just like using the 2 tall ones, I guess it just looks better. They're pretty easy to get to, but you could use anything. The one optional block we have is glowstone. I place that up on top of the farm so it shines light through the entire thing. I also have one other kind of optional block, is this stair right here, and that's that way I can open up this chest and get access to the storage. And then that's the stair right here. The other blocks we have is 1 slab, and we use that for the redstone so the signal could go upwards. And we also have 10 glass, that way we could see into the farm, then a hopper and chest for the storage, and then about a stack of building blocks, and I think you need 38 total. And then if you want to expand the system, the only big change you kind of have to make is for the hopper system. So I'm going to place a block right here to place the hopper off of. I'm going to get rid of this chest, and now I'm going to place another hopper like this. And so that hopper chain will go underneath every module you have in this type of pattern. So you imagine that just extending out, it will go underneath every bee nest you have. And so for each module you'll need an additional flower, all the redstone bits, a new dispenser, a new bee nest. And the structure blocks is a little bit weird. You could get rid of this stuff, you don't need it so much anymore. You gotta keep that glass there so the bees don't escape. And then to expand on more modules, all you have to do is expand it out like this. And you just gotta expand your hoppers. I'm gonna do that by extending these out right here. I'm going to place these off of here so that way we keep that same flow. So right now all the hoppers point in this direction. So you would expand it out just like that. The next bee nest would go right here on top of the hopper. The next dispenser would go right above it. And I think you get the idea. Just expand out the platform, add another grass block, another flower, and that's how you keep expanding this thing. And you could keep that on all the way this way. And I'll show you an expanded model just a little to see what that's like, but that's the basic idea. And now that we're in survival mode, let's get this thing built up. So what I'm going to do is collect all the resources we have in this chest. This should be everything we need. And the very first thing I'm going to do, and this is almost not even a necessary step, for most terrain you're going to be building this in, but that's just to build up the platform. Uh-oh, I already need a pickaxe. So now what I'm going to do is expand out that platform. Here's another thing I misplaced. This is where the grass block goes. So let's just build up that whole base layer, and I'll show you all the spots that you don't need in it. So that's what I have built up for the first layer. The reason we don't have these 3 spots is because we're going to have a grass block going here, a hopper here, and then a chest in this spot. So pretty much all you need is this part of the structure. And now I'm going to work on some more structure just by adding in this stuff. We'll also add in the glass right here. So that's just all the way around this thing, and then another layer up, just like that. So now we used up all of our glass, and the one thing I want to point out is the very last thing we're going to do is place in this nest, because you don't want to place it in too early and have the bees escape. And so now I'm just going to work on finishing up the floor. So grass block goes there. And then besides that grass block in this area we have left out, we're going to place in our chest and our hopper pointing into it. And now we're going to work on building up the redstone. So for that redstone, you want to have a comparator not on top of the hopper, but right next to it, and then you want to have 1, 2, 3 redstone pointing out of it, and the 4th redstone should go up onto this block. But before we place that in, what I'm going to do is place in a filler block right here, so we could place our top slab just like that. I'm going to get rid of that block now and place our redstone there instead, so that's our 4th redstone, and then our 5th redstone places up on top of the slab. And now what I had to do is place in a block off of that redstone, so we can now place a torch on top of that. So mimicking this design right over here, we're going to place in a torch like this, and squeezing right to the edge, we're going to place in a block off of that torch, if we can manage to do it. So there we go, we got that one in. On top of this goes a piece of redstone, and on the side of that redstone, or on top of this torch, goes a block like that. Now we got to jump over here, we're going to place another block off of this redstone, just like that, and on that block will be a torch. And now what we're going to do is place in another block, and I think we have to place in a filler block like that. So now we can remove the filler block, we just needed to place in this one here, and on top of that block goes a repeater. We're going to do a right click on it once. Now we can place in another block like this with a redstone on top of it, and right underneath this block is where our dispenser is going to soon be. And now the final thing we need to do is place in some roof blocks just like this, going all the way around the thing. And I'm also going to place in our optional glowstone right here to light up the place. Now the very last few things we have to do is place in our dispenser. And I apologize, I forgot to add the dispenser into the material list, so I'll make sure to go back and edit that in, but you need a dispenser as well. So there we go, I got our dispenser that we can place in now. And you want to place this in kind of a weird way where you have to go as close as you can underneath it without blocking the placing spot. Oh, I messed that up big time. So let's try that again. You got to go right next to it without being in the way. If we do it just right, just close enough, the dispenser should be facing straight down, and the little dot thing should be pointing into the nest that we're going to soon place. And I should have recognized this earlier on. I had to go back and break this glass block, and the reason I had to do that is we need to place in our bee nest, our flower, and our glass, all to finish up this farm. So we're going to get everything in a row and ready to go. And now what we need to do, and I'll place some blocks here as this water is being pretty annoying. So what I'm going to do is shift right here. I'm going to get our bee nest, and then I actually want to swap these two. So it goes bee nest, flower, and then glass. Because once we place it on this thing, bees are going to try to leave it. And I'm also placing it from this side so the front is facing towards the grass block just like we want. So I'm going to do it just like this. Place in the bee nest, place in the flower, place in the glass, and you have the whole thing sealed up. And now the very last materials we have are some more blocks and then also our stairs. So all I'm going to do is place in these blocks like this, also here, and then a stair just like that, so we can now open up our chest and solve that structural piece in. That's pretty much it for a single module of this thing, and I'll put up the number of how many honey bottles you would get per hour from this farm. But that's a single module done. If you want to increase the efficiency, what you could do is expand on this. And after a little bit of work, there's pretty much what an expanded model would look like. So you can see we just added in more nests. Each of those have their own comparator clock system to detect when it's full of honey, and they also all have their own flowers and their own little cells so they don't go mixing into different nests. And then also all those nests are facing forward so they go into the flower spots. But that's basically what it looks like. Underneath this thing, we have all the hoppers pointing in one direction, and that's all towards this chest. So every single one of those nests will feed into this one chest here, so anything we collect ends up here. And now all you have to do on both these, whether you did a single module or multiple, is to go fill up any of these dispensers with bottles, or also shears. So shears will give you honeycombs, and bottles will give you the honey bottles, which you can then craft into honey. So just go through filling up all of these. You could put in as much as you like. Just remember that once it's empty, the farm won't be able to activate and you'll need to go refill it. That's basically the idea. Just fill this up with shears or bottles and you're ready to go. And then all you have to do is AFK here. The bees will continue to collect nectar and make it into honey, and all you have to do is let this system run and have those bottles collect it all, and everything will end up in these chests. I should also mention that you could have both bottles and shears in the same thing. You could even do that in a single module, have shears all up here and bottles down here. That would even work, so you would get a mix of both honeycombs and honey bottles. But that's basically the idea of this thing, and it's really reliable, but still pretty simple, and I think this should be a great addition to your world. Oh wait, hold on, I forgot to add in this. And there we go, I think that's it. I showed you how to collect bees and get them into groups of 3 so we could add them into the farms. So make sure you have 3 bees in each one of these little things. You gotta be careful so they don't sting you, because if they sting you, they'll lose their stinger and die a little bit after. And also bees, if you make one mad, they all get mad at you, so you gotta watch out for a whole swarm of them. But that's pretty much this little farm all wrapped up. So I want to thank you guys for watching. I tried to keep this pretty short and simple. It's just a little mini farm, there's not too much to go into, but thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it a bunch. So that's it for the video. See you guys next time. Thanks for watching.